What's up, everybody? It's Jason Wieloch over at the Wieloch Group. Welcome back live on our Facebook page. And just like we've been doing every week, we are doing supplements to our podcast due diligence. Lee Taylor hasn't joined one of these great interviews yet, but I've been fortunate enough the last few weeks to interview some really cool people that have small businesses around Atlanta. We've got other great stuff ahead, other realtors across the country. They're going to talk about the markets and how they're being affected. But right now, we've got a really special guest. It's my buddy, estate planning attorney, Kent Walker. What's up, Kent?
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Kent. Good to see you, man.
Kent, you were introduced to me through a mutual friend about 2 years ago. And I always remembered you more than any estate planning attorney because you actually can make me laugh. And it's hard to do that when you're talking about death, right?
Yeah.
So, you've been referred to a number of our clients and given some really great complimentary advice to me at times and our team over at Compass. And so just tell everybody, who is Kent Walker and what your philosophy is here in Atlanta?
Sounds good, man. Yeah, so that's funny that you say that. I often get the reaction during a will signing, for instance, when people leave or during the signing where they'll say, wow, I thought this was going to be a totally different experience. This is actually kind of fun. Because what we're trying to do with an estate plan is make sure you're organized, right? Like I look at it a little bit like you're getting on an international flight. You're going to make it there okay. Everything's going to be fine. But there's a little part of you that percolates that you really want your affairs in order. And so my natural market, people like you and I sort of, I'm 42 years old. There's no need for it to be this somber affair, right? It really is just, you're being a responsible person. You're taking care of your family. You're making sure you're not a burden on others, and you're doing some adulting, right? And that's the sort of the nuts and bolts of it for most engagements. Of course, I also work with people in different parts of life, and that is a different experience. But to your point, I mean, there is really no reason why it can't be an enjoyable experience for all. So the other part of what you had mentioned was, who am I? What do I do? I mean, so I am the family lawyer, not the divorce type. They have their specific need. And, every now and then people in a certain life point might have that need, but I'm the everyday guy. I'm the one that you can call 24/7. You have a family issue or whatnot, you typically call me because I'm the one that's sort of the first available attorney because I do everybody's estate plan. That means if you have a child or you get married or you're buying a house, you're retiring, any of these, you moved in from out of state, mom or dad are getting older, you have to do planning for them. All these different like life points, these key events all require an attorney to sort of plan for them if you're being a responsible person as far as running your life. So I make myself very available. And we run like a very high activity practice. Like last year, about 300 new families passed through my doors getting their planning done. So my philosophy is to be readily available and make things really easy on the client experience for everyday folks. A lot of estate attorneys are going to work only in the very high end marketplace where they might work with only a dozen families. All they do is do a billable hourly rate where they're just working with a family on a big tax problem because they have $100 million. And frankly, that requires a lot of planning. I'm dealing much more with folks that just need a sound but comprehensive estate plan in place because these are eventualities we have to deal with, and they have kids.
So one thing that I don't believe people always think about is how connected real estate is to estate planning, right? Because real estate is one of your biggest assets. And when you're acquiring a new piece of real estate, that's what you're doing, right? And a lot of times you're moving up, you now have more assets than you did before, or you have an asset you didn't have. Whatever the case may be, we have found that when people make a purchase, it's one of the most important times to review that plan, right? Because your life situation has changed. So not only focusing on that, but just in general, what are some of the reasons, or give me some of the common pushbacks that people give you to resisting estate planning?
Okay. Well, the most common one is I'm not going to die tomorrow, right? So a big challenge for me is creating an urgency of sorts, right? Because they're right. From an actuarial table point of view, we live to be like 88 years old, or it depends on, your background and your male versus female, things like that. But ultimately, sure, there isn't necessarily an urgency. But that said, it's an all or nothing zero sum game, right? Like if something does happen and you have nothing, it's a horrible result. You're going through a probate court administration, or at least you aren't, your family is, which is worse because you're not taking ownership of the problem. The distribution of assets is directed by the Georgia Code. So if you've got a wife and kids, the money's not going to your spouse. It's going 1/3 to your spouse and 2/3 to your two children. You could have infighting. You could take forever going through the probate proceeding. So there's all kinds of horrible results. But that's the number one reason is people just think that, they're not going to die. Or they think, this is a funny one, they think that they get their estate plan done, they curse themselves. Like this happens all the time with sort of the patriarch, if you will, the gentleman who's running his family business. He thinks, oh my gosh, if I do my estate plan, I'll die the next day. I swear that people actually believe that. So that's another one. But yeah, a lot of people think that it's hard to find an attorney. It's not. I mean,
you're here on the air. How hard is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to find an attorney, and they think it's going to take a long time, and it's require a lot of, a long engagement. I've tried to solve that. When I was at the big law firm, it did take a month, maybe 2 months to get things turned around. I've got a streamlined process where it's 2 meetings. One you could do by Zoom, the first one where we do the consultation for an hour. 5 business days later, you have the estate plan in front of you. You're signing it. I mean, I really want to make it as convenient as possible. So that's another objection I try to get ahead of is, look, it's easy. And everything I do is flat fee, right? So you're going to know upfront what you're paying. So if you have a resistance around price, because, everybody's got different capacity and that's understandable, right away, whether it's something you can afford or whether you need to save up. Either way, of course, I am an estate attorney, but I really recommend doing it for a variety of reasons. But those are big, sort of big objections, if you will. And to your point about real estate, yes, these are real numbers. Yesterday, I did 6 quitclaim deeds. Today, I just got a report back that one was recorded with Fulton County. They do it by mail. So at any rate, we are constantly integrating the real estate into the estate plan because we use like a revocable living trust to keep real estate out of probate. If you hold it in your name alone and you don't use like a right of survivorship deed, that's a probate asset. And that means that you're going to have to go through some kind of, you or your family members would have to go through some kind of estate administration. And so we're always trying to look for ways to streamline the estate planning process and the estate administration process, make life easier for everybody. And so the real estate is typically one of the largest, if not the largest asset in people's estate plan. And so we are always working to address that right off the bat.
So, estate planning can seem very, black and white at times. You're, just making a will, leaving things to people, but there's a lot of different strategies, right, that people can incorporate. So are there like maybe a couple things that you think are unique to your philosophy about how to structure an estate plan, whether you're a single person, couple, kids, whatever the case may be?
Yep.
What drives like some of your philosophy?
So I'm going to stay away from the high end stuff because right now, and the reason for that is right now the federal estate tax exemption is 11.4 million per person, right? So if you have a married couple, and that's usually how you do most of the planning, it's 22.8. If you're above that threshold, you need to do some advanced planning. Below that threshold, probably not. Although 2 years ago, the exemption was half that, right? So with legislatures coming and going, and we had a new tax code under Trump just recently, so things do change. I do put tax planning. Anybody who's got assets that comes through the door, I'm likely going to put some backup tax planning in. But that said, I'm really going to concentrate more on just the regular folks, like the core of my business, the guy next door, if you will. And to that point, I'm usually going to recommend something called a revocable living trust. And it's simply a way to circumvent the court system. So probate court is where your will would be taken if someone was to die, right? So your will goes there, and you get something called letters of testamentary. So your executor is appointed, takes an oath, and then it's good. The executor role, they're gonna have to notify creditors for 4 straight weeks. For 90 days, there's a waiting period, at which point then after the creditors come forward and it's settled, then you can start making distributions. I really like the revocable living trust option because you use something called a pour over will. The will states that everything is poured over into your revocable living trust. You're now operating at a superior court, not probate court, and trust law passes typically by the trust instrument. So you have a death certificate, you have a revocable living trust, and the financial institutions or the property that's held by the trust is being distributed quickly and efficiently with none of that administration I just described. So I'm using that structure for most clients. And it's the kind of thing that most people I tell them about, like say it in the Starbucks line. I'm like, look, Google it, check it out. It's a pretty typical, popular estate planning technique. Most people are going to go for that option if they have any kind of wealth. That means like assets that would go through the probate court system. So most people just don't want to fool with it. I tell people it's worse than going to the DMV because you keep having to go back and you keep having to get things approved of. And I get in the mail because we do estate administration. People come to me after the fact when a loved one's passed away. There's a will. We probate the will. We do the estate administration. The ones that we started last summer, we're still working on because we wait 30, 60, 90 days for the courts to respond with they might kick something back because they want a birth certificate, right? Like, we do our best to assist the executor along, but invariably it's just wildly inefficient. So, my philosophy is if we can avoid the court system, let's do that. Again, most people have a decent amount of wealth. They've accumulated and they want to make sure that things get passed along to their loved ones. God forbid there's some kind of fatality very efficiently, and quickly. So that's what I'm usually trying to do for them.
I don't know if you notice my mug says smile because I want everybody to be happy when we talk about estate plans.
There you go. You got to keep it light.
That's right. All right. So good information. Now let's talk about COVID a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me about your business and how you're adapting to what's going on, because just like real estate, we're doing a lot more of this. I mean, I wish I owned stock in Zoom. Is that a public company? Because
sure, but it's I think so. I imagine it's doing quite well.
I should have gone all in.
Yeah.
So all of us are adapting. Real estate's doing a lot of things virtually, whether it's showing homes, 3D tours, having consultations on Zoom. I mean, it was unheard of in our business to have consultations on Zoom just 30 days ago. Probably not unheard of, but you'd be like that guy, right? Now everyone's doing it. So tell us what you're doing that's adapting, sorry. And are you doing things that were maybe completely new to the legal profession?
Yep. So, I mean, obviously very relevant question. I honestly, so going back like 13 years, so to the Great Recession, I was truly worried when this thing came down the pipeline that all the work would dry up, because back then it really did. People would push out what was very important planning. They'd put it off. They'd say, I'll do this next year because of constraints due to limitation. They were afraid of where the next paycheck was going to come from. And I was very worried that would happen again. This environment is totally different because there's a health component to it. So people, although might feel a little bit of a crunch on the financial side, are moving up the priority list on the planning side, right? So they kind of balance each other out. So I've seen sort of a very consistent level of flow of business prior to and currently. So I was quite surprised. But the challenge is switching to your point to my model, because my model is an in-person model. I don't want to do consultations over the phone. Of course, I do it as needed because some people just can't make it in due to their schedule. If you're a school teacher, for instance, it's like almost impossible. Certain people who are elderly, it just makes more sense to do it by phone. But typically, I've always wanted to be sitting in front of the person because it's a very sort of compassionate, very personal environment when you're talking about who is it that can raise your children? Who is it that could be responsible for the money? And, like as you and I've always talked, I try to keep it light, right? Like I try to make it so we create a narrative for during the consultations. Look, we're controlling for the fact that there's been an absence now of two parents. They've died. What does the life look like for the kids? So I wanted to translate that strong narrative that we have in person, and Zoom, to your point, has been fantastic because although not ideal, you're not still in person, you can still get that personal vibe. So when I'm talking about, look, who is the best parent? Like for the guardianship, for instance, we're looking not for a money person, a responsible person of our money. We want somebody who wants to be a parent. We want somebody who actively would care about your children and act in their best interest. We're talking about location, age. Is it mom and dad, brother, sister, a friend? How much disruption is there? Is the child going to a new school? Things like that. That kind of thing is very helpful if you're doing it in person, because you really are talking about what your child's life will look like after the fact. And the same thing with the trustee role, like who would be the supervisor around money. It's much more effective if the person can see me when I'm in my demeanor, when I'm talking to them about, for instance, with the trust, the analogy I look at it is, we're going to give the children money at some point in time, but we need a supervisor in place, much like when our children, are young, we go out for dinner. We leave them in the house and they have the use of the house. So they have the full use of the house. They watch TV, they can get a snack, they can go to the refrigerator, they sleep in the bed, the heat's on or whatnot. But we have a babysitter, a supervisor there that's implementing the rules. And then at some point in time, right, all of a sudden we go out for dinner and the children are old enough, they don't burn down the house. They get the use of the house. Well, the trust is very similar to that. And so I find that if we can do these kind of conversations in person, it remains very much like a little bit lighthearted, but I can explain things better, as opposed to, I could have just done, I'll send you an email and you can fill out my form. So the technology has been fantastic for doing the consultations, which I think is so important in my practice, getting comfortable with the planning process, understanding in layman's terms how things work. If I was just to send you an email stating, hey, I need to two guardians, two trustees, executor, power of attorney, advanced director for healthcare, send that back to me. It means nothing to you. So having the consult just transposed basically into this format has been really, really good. The thing that I cannot get around is the signing. There was an executive order signed only recently, like a week ago, where you could do a remote signing. I'd still have to get you all the paperwork.
With notarizations, as you talk about with notarizing, because I think
so I need a notary
to real estate too. They can
so real estate got theirs first, and then we got ours about a week or two later. But it doesn't really help because I still need a notary and a witness. So I've solved that by doing what I call social distance signings, and that means the person walks straight in the door, like straight right into a glass conference room. Nobody else comes in the room. I bring a second set of documents, walk to the end of a 20-foot table. It literally is like it's like when you're dining back in like the 1600s, like we're like 20 feet apart.
They said 6 feet, but you went like 3 times.
Yeah, I went like the other end. And so it's almost comical. And so anyways, I've got my line of sight and I witnessed the paperwork, and then the notary and the witness never come in the room. So I just take the papers to them, and then people walk right back out to their car, and to a client, everybody has come in, done that, and left with no problems at all. Like no COVID. Yeah, but it's more, of course there is that like specific scientific risk, but it's the emotional risk, right? People are afraid to go outside. And so when I explain how it works, and then, the feedback afterwards, like, were you comfortable with it? People are so happy. So it's thank goodness, because otherwise I just have like 100 estate plans that aren't signed, right? We wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So it's been good.
The first thing that people do when the economy feels like it's contracting, which it is.
GDP
down. It's more than a feeling, to be conservative, to not spend money, right?
Yeah.
Same thing can happen in real estate. Is a little different unless you have to move. It's easy to stay put, whatever. There's various reasons, but then there's also things that are just super elective. Insurance has always been that way, not, your homeowners and car, but your life insurance, disability, estate planning sort of falls under that same category. I don't have to do it now, but I should. And in this kind of environment, it seems like people would have a tendency to say, you know what, I want to hold on to my money a little bit, right? But what's the reason more than ever to do it at this moment? Obviously you could die, right? That's like the first. But there are some things that could happen in that process, specifically medically, that you do with your estate plan. So maybe speak to that really quickly.
Yeah, so excellent point. So the estate plan covers more than just the if you die scenario, which is covered by a will or a trust. There's two more components that every estate planner or any good one typically uses, and that's a power of attorney and an advance directive for healthcare. The power of attorney, super critical if you're in the hospital for an extended period of time. Let's just say that in a normal situation, people typically get better, right? You go to the hospital, you get better. Doctors are, usually will help you, and you get better and you return home. The last thing you want to do is, once you return home from beating this illness or whatever it might be, the affliction you have, is to return to a house in shambles because nothing has been taken care of. So a power of attorney, you get ahead of the problem by appointing someone who can pay your medical bills, can pay your mortgage, can pay for your children's daycare, whatever it might be. So it's very helpful to have that in place. So that's one thing that we're doing, that we've always done, but now it's sort of, because of the possibility of going to the hospital, it's a little bit heightened. And the other thing is the advanced directive for healthcare. Now, most people will know this as the living will. Up until like 2007, I believe, it was called the living will. They combined what's called a medical healthcare directive and an advanced directive, or no, medical power of attorney, I should say, and a healthcare directive. They put them together, so the living will is encompassed within that, and it's basically your end of life decision making. But it's also got whether you want a ventilator, things like that. So it's got a check the box, specific medical questions, and it's very relevant in this time period. People are really asking for that because you just have a heightened sense of, I might end up going to the hospital. I want to make sure my wishes are there. So the advanced directive is really been top of mind for a lot of people. And to be clear, again, like the living will is now called the advanced directive, because you're making your wishes known. You're letting your family know ahead of time, because you might be in a situation where you cannot speak, and then the doctors will ask your family what to do. And you don't want your next of kin, your loved ones, having to make a decision on your life. They're bearing a horrible burden there. It's so much better if they can refer to what you had wanted or asked for and then follow your wishes.
Especially
So
if they don't like you.
yeah, well, that's quite different. I mean, that in that case, that could be helpful as well,
Right. depending on it. All right. So a couple quick things, and we got to wrap it up, man.
Yeah.
Love having you on. I've always been a firm believer in this subject. And so I know that we've got a lot of pending closings coming up and recent past clients, and you've been generous to offer a discount, if you will, in the first 60 days after somebody closes on a house with us. I think that's to the tune of 25% or $500. But tell us like what your normal rate is and what your services are, right?
Yeah. So it really does depend, because it's tough to quote something, because people come in and they have an expectation, and then it turns out they have a blended family, and all the boxes are, I've got 2 children here and then a second child or third child over here. So it can get a little complicated, but it's always going to be a flat fee. And if it's a single person, my sense is it's usually going to be about $1,000. And then a couple is going to be about $1,500, but it could be lower. It could be a little bit more, but that's probably a good range. Like the mean or median would be about $1,250 or so. And of course, referrals from you, as part of doing a closing on a home within 60 days or so. You've got that big asset. You have this major life event. In order to encourage people to take care of all their affairs and make sure that their children are provided for and taken care of, and obviously a great relationship. 25% off would be something that you would sort of count on on an ongoing basis. But yeah, it's very fair. There's absolutely no obligation ever to do anything as far as paying a fee. I don't charge up front. So I do an hour complimentary consultation on all engagements. So the person gets the opportunity to understand the value and then make an informed decision. But I always quote the fee at the end of that first meeting, and then the person knows 5 days from that, by that point in time, they can have it taken care of, and they know how much it'll cost. And so most people do move forward. If they're not able to move forward due to financial reasons, I'm usually able to offer we do enough business that I'm able to offer overtime payment plan. Yeah, I can just be like, look, obviously as a business owner, it'd be helpful for me to be paid for the services I provided at the point of sale, but I understand if it's difficult for you or whatnot, and so let's spread it out over 3-4 months, whatever makes sense for the family. Because at the end of the day, I really just want to make sure I help out the family.
And how can they find you, Kent?
Besides from you, no, it's So I've got my website, walkerestateplanning.com. So WALKER, my last name, estate, and then planning.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. My phone number is 404-422-2710. Most people reach out, either by that number works as a text, for instance, but most people just give me a call or shoot me an email. We're very responsive. Like, we'll get back to you within like 24 hours, and we'll set a consultation within the next few days. The way that we run the practice is, it's like a doctor's office. 8 a.m. through 5 p.m. is typical. Every hour in the hour is a consultation or a signing. Today alone, I had 2 different clients call, and they said that, they're busy during the daytime. So we're doing the consultations like 6, 7 p.m. I mean, whatever works. I deal with regular folks with regular calendars and regular schedules. Even during this COVID environment, you still have kids. So that you have to tend to. So I try to be as flexible as possible. I work Saturdays too, typically till about noon. A lot of people take that option to, meet with me at 10 a.m. on a Zoom call, so.
Awesome, dude. Well, everybody, we enjoyed having Kent Walker on, Atlanta estate planning expert. And again, we're going to be uploading this to our YouTube page. It'll be saved here on Facebook Live if you want to come back and rewatch some of the interview. Ken gave some really great tips today about estate planning, emphasized his philosophy, the importance of it. And you can find all of this content and more supplemental content like this on our page at wielochgroup.com as well, which links to basically everything we have: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's a whole web of content for you. But I'm a really big believer in this subject. And so if you want to ask us any questions, you can always email us as well at info@wielochgroup.com, or you can contact Kent directly. So we appreciate having you on, Kent, and
Thanks, man.
really happy for your business, that it's going strong here in Atlanta during this crisis. So, all right, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon, bud.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.